If willpower worked, the rehab industry wouldn't exist. If just say no was biology, 40 million Americans wouldn't still be trapped. For over a century, we've treated addiction like a moral failure. We've been wrong. The willpower model doesn't just fail, it costs lives. Because addiction isn't about character. It's a survival system inside your brain getting hijacked. And once that system is rewired, just stopping isn't about willpower anymore. Your brain is actively working against you. In this video, I'm going to show you what's actually happening in the brain, why the willpower model keeps failing, and what treatment looks like when we finally stop blaming the person and start treating the biology. And who am I to tell you that willpower was never the problem? My name is Dr. Sulman Aziz Mirza, triple board certified in adult psychiatry, child and adolescent psychiatry, and addiction medicine, and I treat what actually drives addiction, not what people prefer to blame. Let's start with what addiction actually is, clinically, because most people get this wrong. Addiction is compulsive use despite negative consequences, loss of control, and continued use even when the person genuinely wants to stop. That last part matters. Not kind of wants to stop, has every reason to stop, and still can't. Most people hear that and think, okay, but why not just stop? That question makes sense until you understand what's happening underneath it. Relapse rates for substance use disorders fall somewhere between 40 and 60%, which is about the same as other chronic medical conditions like diabetes or hypertension. That's not a motivation problem. That's what chronic illness looks like. And it's not just substances like alcohol, nicotine, cannabis, opioids. The same circuitry shows up with gambling, pornography, shopping, gaming. The substance is almost beside the point. What matters is what's happening underneath. Addiction is a hijacked survival system. Your brain has a mechanism designed to keep you alive. It tags certain things as urgent, necessary, get this or die. Water, food, safety. That system doesn't care about long-term goals. It cares about right now. And once addiction takes hold, the substance or behavior gets tagged the same way. Not metaphorically, at the level of brain chemistry. That's why this is not a willpower problem. The part of your brain responsible for long-term thinking, the prefrontal cortex, gets overridden when the survival system activates. It's not that the person stops caring. It's that an older, more powerful system takes control. Telling someone to just use more willpower at that point is like telling someone with a broken leg to walk it off. The machinery required to just stop is exactly what's been disrupted. I had a patient, intelligent, high-functioning, deeply committed to their family. They knew the risks, they could explain every consequence, and they still couldn't stop injecting heroin in the bathroom before family dinner without medical intervention. That's not a character flaw. That's what this disease looks like. So if it's not a choice, what is it? That's where the neuroscience gets interesting and a little uncomfortable. We need to clear something up right away. Dopamine is not the pleasure chemical. That's the simplified version, and it's wrong. Dopamine is about anticipation, salience, motivation. It's the brain's way of tagging something as important. When something triggers a large dopamine release, the brain stamps it. This matters. Do this again. That system is essential for survival. It's why you eat when you're hungry, why you seek connection, why you pursue goals. But here's the problem. Substances and certain compulsive behaviors hijack that system at a scale the brain was never built to handle. And in the modern world, we've engineered stimuli that are stronger, faster, and more concentrated than anything the human brain evolved around. Highly potency substances, ultra-processed rewards, endless digital stimulation. The system that once protected us is now being overwhelmed. The brain notices, and it adapts. Here's the part nobody warns people about. It adapts by turning the thermostat down. Repeated dopamine spikes reduce receptor sensitivity, sometimes even receptor number. Now the baseline feels cold. Normal life feels flat, gray, unrewarding. Not because the person is lazy, not because they don't care, but because the reward system has been recalibrated. And the only thing that brings the temperature back up, temporarily, is the substance. That's tolerance, and that's craving. Not weakness, but biological adaptation. And this is why withdrawal feels so brutal. Remove the substance, and the system destabilizes. Anxiety, dysphoria, physical pain, sometimes seizures. The body isn't being dramatic, it's reacting to a system that now believes this stimulus is necessary for stability. And once you understand that, the idea that someone should just stop starts to make a lot less sense. Addiction isn't about wanting something too much. It's about a survival system that now mistakes relief for survival. Right about here is where another narrative usually shows up. The idea that trauma is the root cause of addiction. Trauma absolutely matters. It's a major risk factor. But it's not the whole story. Genetics account for roughly 40 to 60% of addiction vulnerability. Some brains are simply more sensitive to reinforcement from the start. Oversimplifying addiction into a single cause, even a compassionate one, misses what we actually see clinically. This is a pattern you'll see across mental health. We tend to moralize what we don't biologically understand. Addiction is multifactorial. Genetics, neurodevelopmental, environment, mental health. Which brings us to something often overlooked and often treatable: co-occurring conditions. ADHD, depression, anxiety. If the reward system is already dysregulated, substances don't just feel good, they feel stabilizing. And removing the substance without treating what's underneath usually fails. Again, that's not weakness, that's untreated biology. So, if addiction isn't a moral failure, if it's not a willpower problem, what actually works? If addiction is a brain disease, treatment has to address the brain. Recovery starts to make sense when we treat the biology directly. White knuckling, it isn't just a treatment. And shame isn't a treatment. Waiting for rock bottom isn't treatment. Medication is one part of what works. Here's two of my favorites. Naltrexone blocks opioid receptors in the brain's reward circuit. When someone drinks or uses opioids, the expected reward signal is blunted. Over time, the brain begins to unlearn the association. That's not mindset, that's neuroplasticity. And this next one saves lives, even though it's widely misunderstood. Buprenorphine stabilizes opioid receptors, eliminates withdrawal, and reduces cravings without producing the high that drives compulsive use. That's not replacing one drug with another, that's treating a brain disorder with medicine. But here's what may be even more important. For many people, the substance isn't the primary problem. It's the solution they found for something else. Untreated ADHD, chronic anxiety, depression running quietly in the background. When those are properly diagnosed and treated, the pull toward addiction often weakens dramatically. Treatment isn't a dramatic act of willpower. It's gradual recalibration. The brain relearning what normal feels like. And that process works far better when we stop moralizing and start medicalizing. We started with this. If willpower worked, addiction wouldn't still be destroying lives. And now you know why. It was never about character. It was about a survival system that got hijacked, and a culture that kept blaming the person instead of treating the biology. So here's what I hope you take away from this. Addiction isn't about wanting something too much. It's about a survival system that has learned the wrong signal, mistaking relief for survival. And once you see it that way, the question stops being, why can't they just stop? The real question becomes, how do we treat the brain that got rewired? That's what medicine is for. And that's what this channel is about. Understanding mental health through biology instead of blame, through science instead of stigma. If that's a conversation you want more of, make sure to subscribe. And if you want to see what medical recovery actually looks like in practice, I've got a full breakdown of naltrexone and the Sinclair method linked down below. Until next time, be safe and be well.